Will these frequencies work for me? How can I tell? I've been at this for about 4 years insofar as the release of the material to the public, and I get asked a lot of questions. And one of those questions is, will they actually do something for me? How can I know beforehand, especially before I purchase anything? This is going to be a brief primer. It should be substantial and comprehensive enough to get you up to speed with that. This particular video is meant to be used in tandem as the instructional video for 4 other videos that you've been presented in our video archive. You may have come across the video archive that's been presented to you by one of our affiliates. Those other 4 videos are self-test, self-calibrate, energy balancer 1, energy balancer 2. These videos are meant for you to use and play the same that you would with any of our tracks. The full frequency track is embedded in each of these videos. And the way to use them basically is you start with self-test, go on to self-calibrate, then to energy balancer 1, energy balancer 2 follows. So the premise is this: if you've never used our frequencies before, or you've had very minimal exposure, when you play these tracks, and each of them are roughly 10 minutes in length, it gives you the means and ability to immediately find out whether or not your body will respond. And there's a few things you should know about this. First of all, before using any of our frequencies, you should always read, comprehend, and agree to our online disclaimer prior to use. You need to understand that fully. Also, we've never had any reports of this, and we don't know this for certain, but we don't recommend the frequencies necessarily for people that may have epilepsy or suffer from migraines, although some people that have used migraines have responded very well to the frequency technology. Again, as per our disclaimer, it should be kept in mind that while we have had amazing feedback, this is a technology that is experimental, and it's meant for your experimental testing and use. And although we have over 13,000 people globally who are either following our work or are members, and we've had so many positive reports and feedback from people to the point that there's too many to keep up posting them. So this is obviously a good sign that it's still not a perfected science or technology. You know, we're still discovering more about this every day. And that's why participation, for instance, of our global membership is so important. And we really do require all of you to stay in touch with us and constantly let us know about the new and unique ways that you're applying this technology and what you're finding. But with these tracks, you now have the opportunity to test them. They're free, and you can try them at your leisure. There's more information and details in depth in other video presentations that I've given, separate from this one, and separate from the 4 that complement this video. These are presentations that I've given in the past over the last 3 years. A lot of referential information, things that you'll want to know about, are found within there, and I encourage you to view them and watch them. You're probably looking at a few hours of your time, which you can do at your leisure. The way that this is meant to work, as with most of our frequency tracks, is through resonance entrainment. And so the concept, although novel, is a fairly simple one. Abstractly, it's this: a pattern of consciousness is mathematically mapped with enough of a degree of certainty and clarity resolution that when it's played back to the body and mind, it tends to induce the state that's inherent in it. In other words, it superimposes an actual energetic template, not metaphorically, but literally, onto your tissue, onto your nervous system, onto your body, onto your mind, onto your emotions, etc. And therefore, you as a being begin to attenuate or tune in to what that state is, to the degree that it's phenomenal, to the degree that you can tell. One of the problems that I've personally had, and probably a lot of people have had, is that there's a lot of different kinds of acoustic-based therapies out there, and a lot of times promoters of these products make claims that are not necessarily typically experienced by their audience, although they may be, usually in a much smaller percentage than they claim. So if it's like, a hypnosis, subliminal, some kind of like differential beat type mechanism, they may or may not work for you. And the number of people or the statistics of success may not necessarily be as high as the promoters claim. So I want to make it really, really clear in this video as to what you can reasonably expect and what we've seen happen and what we've experienced and what the likely outcomes for you will be. So regarding usage, here's what I'd suggest to you. Using the sequence that I've suggested, in other words, you begin with self-test, then self-calibration, energy balancer 1, energy balancer 2. I would play them all in sequence, looped together, so that one plays after the other, and do that for a minimum of one sequence. So 10 minutes for the first track, 10 minutes for the second, and so on. You've got a 40-minute clip there. Alternatively, you might also want to play track 1, self-test, for 40 minutes. So you loop the 10-minute track and you let it play for that period. The same thing with the rest of the tracks. So a 40-minute loop, the singular track of self-calibration playing, 40 minutes, singular loop. So in other words, you're playing each track 4 times. It's looping on its own. You do that through the list: self-test, self-calibration, energy balancer 1, energy balancer 2. Now, this is an average mean suggestion, and what I've just mentioned is not going to apply for everyone, and I wanted to give you an idea as to what can be reasonably expected. And I'm going to break this down to the best of my knowledge homogeneously across our user population. So what we've found over the last 4 years is that roughly there's about a 20% population, 20% of the user population does not respond to the frequencies, and they don't respond consistently. In other words, they're really not getting much of anything. They may enjoy the sounds or they may not. Within that 20% includes people that almost without fail, regardless of the track that they listen to, that either they're getting nothing from it or they may find it agitative and not pleasant to listen to. And then you've got roughly about a 60% base who take to it phenomenally well, which means that that 60 percentile, and this is a rough figure, maybe a little bit higher, not lower, but a little bit higher, respond ecstatically in a very brief period of time. So that means upon exposure to it, within the first few minutes, they instantaneously know that there's something good going on here that they're responding to. In the remaining percentile, there's variance across the table. And what I mean by that is that in the remaining 20%, you have acute responses. Or, well, I should say, like, out of that 20%, half of that is acute responses, half of that is very, very, very middle-of-the-road responses. In the acute range, it's positive, but in that range, roughly 10% are people that are very intuitive, they're very sensitive. In other words, they don't require very much exposure time at all, and they respond super fast, like strong response super fast. So this can be literally within 3 to 10 minutes. People are like, okay, yeah, I'm really feeling this and I'm really experiencing this change. In the last 10%, it's a very middle of the road thing. It's not that it's agitating them, it's not that it's neutral, and it's not that they're getting like a super powerful response. They do feel better, and they can associate this with the frequency use, and it does tend to be like that for them consistently, but the improvement is moderate. So they're glad they're using it, and they'd rather have it and use it than not, but they don't tend to be getting these really huge breakthrough, quantum jump experiences, or if they do, it doesn't happen very often. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here too is that based on observation of myself and everyone else in our groups, there can also, for those people that respond either well, really well, or incredibly well, that in many of those people, again, not all, but in many of these people, there is variance over time of the intensity of the effects. And what we've been able to track this down to is generally fluctuation of natural cycles in the background and also internal cycles occurring within their bodies. And one of the primary ones is lunar phase change. Now, the details of all this I actually cover much more in depth in the 2-hour webinar presentation, which was given, I believe it was December 2010. I can't remember exactly. It's January right now, but I've been so swamped the last little bit that I can't remember exactly when it got made. But it's roughly within the last 3 days. So in that seminar, we talk more about the effects of the moon, why that actually happens, and we get to the techniques of it. I'm not going to go into the whole thing here. But what I mean by this is that when you're using frequencies, even if you're a good responder, what you can expect to happen is that on roughly 4 times of the month, for a cluster of 1 to 3 days per interval of those 4 times, that there can be fluctuation or variance of effects. So in other words, whenever the moon is at a hard quarter, it's like new moon, full moon, quarter moon, there can either be a profound amplification of positive effects. In other words, you notice that the frequencies are affecting you way more powerfully, and it's really, really positive, and you're really happy about it. Or they may drop off. So the effects may actually dilute or diminish. And what can happen sometimes with some of our users is they may start off in the first week, the first 2 weeks of usage, and they have that first breakthrough period. And probably most of you have by now heard that one of the big benefits of our frequency tracks is that for many of our users, they go through a kind of profound quantum breakthrough euphoria type state where some pretty wild things happen, which are very discernibly trackable back to the frequency exposure. It's like the high that's often reported, the kind of euphoric high that gets induced, or a lot of really intense positive things start to happen or change in their lives. Probably this is one of the biggest things that differentiates our technology from any other sonic-based technology in the market. I feel like I know what I'm talking about, and that I'm certain in this. I haven't come across anything close to the kind of quantum breakthrough experience, like a profound body-mind sensation that's really, really, really powerful. In other words, there's no guessing. There's no like, I'm listening to a subliminal CD and gee, I think maybe I feel a bit more confident, or maybe there's something going on, but I don't really notice anything. No, what I mean is that with our frequency technology, we have some really profound effects occurring, unlike what we typically see in any kind of other sound therapy. So when people are reporting this, often that 60 percentile, which may be a bit higher, may often experience this within the first week or two of usage, especially if they're using the frequencies correctly. There is a usage protocol. These frequencies that we've created are not simply audio entertainments. They perform a function, and for that function to work properly, it's required that the frequency track is used properly. So in tandem also with this video, you should be reviewing our online website materials on how to use, what the proper usage protocol is, and you need to utilize that, and also adjust for variation of that protocol, as you see fit and as is properly adaptable to your own body. Because not everybody will respond the same way. Some people that don't respond in a profound way within 45 minutes will respond in 2 hours or 3 hours, and the kind of effect that they experience is well worth the time that they put in. I know it was for me. The first time I experienced it, I had it playing for 3 hours, and it was at the 3-hour mark, 3.5-hour mark roughly, that I had my first breakthrough, my first kind of quantum like wow, what's happening to me? This is amazing. Probably for myself, this is now averaged out to roughly 45 minutes where I experienced the effect. Again, more information is available on these details in previous videos. So in the 4 tracks provided here, it's suggested and recommended that you use them and observe how you respond. And if you're a good candidate for this technology, in other words, if this technology will work well for you consistently over time, then you should be able to tell, most of you should be able to tell, by using these free samples. And so I'm going to give you just some indications as to what you may expect, what your likely outcomes will be. And my purpose is not to bias or build an expectation up in your mind, but it's to simply give you an honest observation of what we've seen over time. And I think that the merit of the technology is sufficient so that you'll be able to honestly do your due diligence and witness for yourself, what's happening. So if the technology is a good fit for you, here's what you should be noticing. When you're using the self-test frequency track, for most of you, roughly within the first 10 minutes, but if you're not noticing it within 10 minutes, you can extend the play time. You can extend it to, say, 40, 60 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours. Do not exceed 3.5 to 4 hours playtime per day, and don't use, on average, more than 4 days consecutively per the week. You need to give your body a chance to relax and digest, assimilate the information the frequency tracks. So using the frequency self-test, which again is a video which contains the frequency on it, which is available in our video archive, if you're going to be a good responder toward technology, then what you should be noticing after self-test is done is a feeling of buoyancy, optimism, happiness, cheerfulness, a positivity. You should be noticing not mild. For some of you, it might be a little bit mild, but there should be a notable change in your internal state, and this will be something that you'll be able to witness and go, okay, yeah, I am feeling differently, and it will be lightness, a kind of contentment. And there may even be like a mild sense of wanting to be purpose-driven. Now, for the self-calibration frequency, similar sort of thing, except what you'll probably find is that in addition to those qualities, you may also be feeling what to you may feel like a kind of confidence, a kind of a sense of inner assuredness that you can and will be able to achieve those things in life that matter to you the most. Won't be super powerful. None of these testing frequencies, self-test, self-calibration, energy balancer 1, energy balancer 2, have profound benefits. They will not give you the benefits that our other frequency tracks will, the ones that you would purchase. These free frequency tracks are only meant to introduce your body to the frequency technology, and what they're basically doing in a very simple way is they're simply sending out a signal to your body mind it's a very happy, simple signal that's not probing the body, but it's allowing the body to sample and test the inherent information to see how it will respond. And so going on from that to energy balancer 1 and energy balancer 2, in this case it may be, again, similar qualities to the former two tracks, but in the case of energy balancer 1 or energy balancer 2, there may also be a sense of calm, and there will be a sense of wanting to see, balance in life, balance internally, balance in your environment. This would be like, you might notice small things, like you suddenly notice that you appreciate when you see people treating each other fairly, and when you're being good to yourself and being kind to yourself. So there won't be powerful effects induced, but what you should notice is that there should be a powerful enough affectation of the frequencies for you. If this happens, then there's a very good chance, from what we've seen over time, that the frequency technology in general will be a good fit for you. So if you respond this well to all 4 tracks, chances are you're going to respond to the tracks that are for purchase. So those frequencies which you might purchase from our catalog that have a specific purpose of application and are found by many of our users and members to induce very positive benefits, then likely you'd be a good responder for this technology. Now, if you don't respond much at all, you don't notice anything, and you've tried to adjust your exposure time and your volume setting, because remember, if you're going to use these tracks, you have to use them correctly, and it's very, very important that you use the protocol that we suggest. If you're going to test them properly, then you might as well know how to do it properly. and that means, you know, following our methodology. So if you've tried, say, playing it for 10 minutes, 40 minutes, a couple of hours, and you've done this, you know, with all the different tracks, and you're not getting nothing, you're getting nothing, nothing's happening to you, you know, you're not having a negative response, you're not having a positive response, then the next thing that you can do is try it at a different date and time. Wait a few days. Wait at least 3 days. Nothing happens there, then wait a week. Try it at different times for the period of a month. And what you might find is that if you've tried it your first time out and you got nothing, having waited a few days and you go back to it, then you might notice something like really, really beautiful, really positive, and it might seem a bit weird, it's a little bit surprising that, you know, a change in time can have such an enormous effect, but it can. This is what we've been seeing in our group. So if you don't get if nothing happens for you, you know, your first try out, just wait a little while. Go back to it, try it again in a few days or a week later, or, you know, in the middle of the month, whatever. And you might notice a complete change. You know, you might notice that now, oh, it's really affecting me, so this is huge. If you have a negative response, and a negative response would be you've played it for a few minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and it's not pleasant to you, you know, you're finding that these 4 samples are, you know, something that annoys you, that you're not comfortable with, then again, if you want to, you could try it in a few days or a week. But if you try this consistently over time, and you're not getting something positive, and it's like a meaningful, you know, positive sensation, and you have tested it, you have used the protocol, chances are pretty good that this technology won't work for you. And like I said, there is a percentile of those that try and test our frequencies where they're not either working for them, or they're not something that they feel is, you know, a good fit for them. And we've speculated as to why this is, and we don't know for sure why some people, you know, take so well to them and others don't. But what we have found is that there are some common indicators which may provide insight into this. So some speculation as to why this doesn't work well for some people is that the frequencies they're trying contain embedded information that they don't require. So this would be kind of like, you know, if you charge a battery that's low on energy, then this is probably a good thing from the battery's perspective because it's being charged up. But if you try to charge a battery that's already full, it doesn't need it. Same thing with, you know, a person that's hungry if they're eating. You know, if you give someone their favorite food too often, whether they're hungry or not, chances are that they're going to become desensitized and they just aren't going to want to eat fried chicken. You know, they're not going to want to eat whatever their favorite dessert is. So for those people that might be trying different frequencies that are getting, you know, no response or maybe an unpleasant response, in that case it may be that they're simply not requiring the energetic information in the frequency track. Here's a story. A very good friend of mine a few years ago wanted to try and sample some of my work. And one of the very first frequencies I made was for sore feet. The idea was to see if we could ameliorate, you know, feet that were aching, and it seemed to work pretty well. So on a lark, he decided to try that one, and he played for 3 minutes. And I was talking with him afterwards, and I said, well, did you try the frequencies? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, which one did you try? And he goes, well, I played the sore feet frequency. And I said, well, how did that go? And he kind of laughed. He says, well, I don't know. It kind of gave me a headache. And now, I doubt that he got a headache from frequency use, but what he might have experienced was some degree of agitation. And I said to him, I said, well, did you have sore feet when you were using the frequency? And then he kind of sheepishly grinned and laughed and said, well, no, I didn't. So you have to understand that the frequencies are sending an instruction set to you. And so, you know, you're sitting at a table. If you and I are having a discussion, and there's something that you really don't need to hear from me. You know, maybe there's something that's bothering you, or maybe there's something that you already know. And I sit down and I start to yammer on, and I keep repeating myself, and I'm trying to tell you something that you already know. You know, in other words, let's say, for instance, you're really good at yoga and you're really good at meditation, and you've just told me that you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed. So then I tell you, because I care about you, I say, well, look, I've heard about this really great yoga meditation, and here are the specific steps. But you already know what that meditation is. And you try to tell me, yeah, well, thanks, Don. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. But, I'm familiar with that yoga meditation and posture, and I know how to do it. But I don't listen to you, and I keep repeating myself over and 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 over again for 30 minutes. Chances are you're probably going to get agitated. So in some cases, you just don't need a certain frequency. And if that's the case, you're probably going to be able to tell within the first 10 minutes. We also think that there's a percentage of the user base that may actually have their brains wired a different way. And there's some research that I've been doing into that area. And physiologically, there may be actually a section of the population who are just not going to be good responders. It's not going to matter what time of the month the frequencies are tested. It isn't going to matter which frequency they try to sample. They just aren't going to respond well. And we have seen this. The other thing, too, I want to share with you is that you should always play the frequencies within a comfortable volume level. It's like that with anything. Whether you're listening to music or you go to a concert or whatever you're watching the TV. Diane, can you hold this for 1 second? Diane, can you hold this for one? Yeah. And so when you're using the tracks, you always want to keep them within the same level of comfort, volume-wise, that you would with any other kinds of sound-based therapy. And so here now, within your grasp, you have a tool set, a collection of instruments that you can use to immediately test to see if the technology will work for you. And if you find that you're getting a good response from this, then based on what we've observed over time, this should be something that you will respond to well with the rest of our frequency tracks, or at least most of them. And I hope that serves you well. I look forward to hearing from you, and please feel free to offer any feedback you'd like.